Welcome to One Step Beyond, a fortnightly show that encourages you to take a step outside your comfort zone and enrich your life. I'm Tony Fletcher. In my professional world, I write books and articles, broadcast about, and also play music. On this show, I explore my personal passions, outdoor activities, travel, and more. For episode 8, we journey to Kenya to talk with Nava Osembo, the co-founder and CEO of Enda Sportswear, Africa's first performance running shoe company and a socially conscious, environmentally friendly, community-based company at that. Then, for our local outdoor field recording, we go to the races for the first time in several months to find out, not surprisingly, that things have changed significantly due to COVID. The fun factor, however, has not, and I'll offer tips for those of you looking to run your first race. So, wherever this finds you in the world, and however it finds you, step out or kick back and prepare to go.
One step beyond!
I first came across Enda Sportswear when it started showing up on my social media, proving that targeted advertising does in fact work. Enda was announcing itself as a Kenyan running shoe company, which, if you know just the first thing about that country's near domination of long-distance running, would seem like something that should have been happening years ago. But beyond inviting us to, quote, run Kenyan, Enda's ads presented a philosophy of doing the right thing, from environmental footprint to community outreach. The more I learned about this nascent company, the more their story excited me. And at a time when many of us are looking within our real-world social networks to question our lack of diversity, I wanted to flip the narrative somewhat and share a truly positive, powerful and affirmative story. It took just a couple of emails to set up an interview with the company's dynamic young co-founder and CEO, Nava Osembo. We spoke in the middle of July via Zoom, Nava beaming in from the company's headquarters in Nairobi. I haven't come closer to the heart of that city than several stopovers at the airport terminal there from my 2 trips to neighbouring Tanzania, where they speak the same language, Swahili. I look forward to visiting properly someday, and maybe truly running Kenyan. The Zoom audio was not perfect, and I've offered a narration here and there where we had dropouts. If a different aspect of technology does its trick, I'll have a transcript available within the show notes. And as a last-minute observation, after listening back to everything that follows, One Step Beyond is not a business show. And it's not meant to be a running show either, though the outdoor lifestyle is very much a part of it, of course. So in this context, Enda is more of an example of how we can all step outside our comfort zones to enrich everyone's lives, whether it's as entrepreneurs, investors, Kickstarter supporters, athletes, creatives, or consumers. I always say that we get to vote with our wallets, and if we want to make the world a better place, we can do so. Enjoy the interview. Well, this is very, very, very exciting for a number of reasons. So why don't I let you introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do, and we will go from there.
Awesome. So my name is Nava Osembo, and I am the CEO of Enda. Enda is a Swahili word that means go, and we are literally Kenya's and Africa's first performance footwear running company. Basically, we make shoes for performance running. And we've been doing that for a couple of years, but began production in 2017, and really hoping to take on the global running footwear industry and get some of that stake for Kenya as well.
Can you give us a little bit about your own story and what led you to this?
I think it was just a series of events. One of them was I've always been interested in sports, right? So whether it's tennis or it's basketball or football, though more a bit of the other two, or running, I've always kind of been interested, but never really as a participant, more of a spectator. Sports is like a really great economic builder, I would say like that. And the good thing about sports is that you can't, like it's based on your performance, and it's meritocracy. Like it's not about who you know or stuff like that. And I think that was what really, I was like, we can do something.
Where in Kenya did you grow up?
In Kenya, you grow up in the city and also you grow up in the country. So usually you do that shuttle. During school, I was in Nairobi. During the school holidays, I come from an area called Tarbo. It's just, I think, like 45. It's not too far from Eldoret, but Eldoret is like the main town. Like if you want anything, you go there. And so a lot of the areas around there, most people are runners, farmers. Farmers first. Like running became like really big over the years, but most of them, even the current runners, most of them still farm. So we are mostly a farming community. And so kind of shuttling between Nairobi and Tarbo, Eldoret, that's where I grew up.
Right. And I saw Eldoret on the videos. I made a point of watching as many of the YouTube videos as I could. And I saw that Eldoret is a local base for the company. I'm also aware that when some of the Kenyan runners win marathons and some big prize money, you often hear about them buying land and building farms. And so I'm aware that would be central to a Kenyan way of life. Is that the Great Rift Valley?
Yes, so Eldoret is in the Great Rift Valley, and a couple of other towns where the athletes come from. But I'd say Eldoret is like the most developed of all the towns around there.
Nava attended the London School of Economics for her master's degree. There she indulged her love of tennis, experiencing the excitement around the annual Wimbledon tournament, and especially that around the Williams sisters. She came up with the noble idea of starting a tennis academy in Kenya, hoping to provide poorer children there with access to a sport that, by her own admission, has a high entry level. For a variety of reasons, the academy did not succeed as intended, and she folded it after 2 years.
And so retreating and looking back at what I had done and what I had failed at, the big question was, what's Kenya really good at? Okay, so tennis isn't really working out for different reasons. What's Kenya really good at? The answer was like right there, of course it's running. And if you look at the whole economy of running, the running industry, between footwear and apparel, like footwear is where like most of the money is. It's where most of the athletes aspire to go. It's where most fans are looking at. And so that made the rational sense. And I was like, why are we not making Kenyan running shoes? And that was the question I had when I met my co-founder. And we had a discussion about it, and just like that, we're like, you know what, we should try making Kenyan running shoes.
Right. Now, if you were studying at LSE for a master's, maybe I can assume you had some sort of financial know-how. Were you going into economics, finance, etc.?
No. I was doing international development, which is also part of the reason why I decided to do something positive. I loved LSE. The experience was amazing, but I just got tired of listening about poverty, corruption, disease, like there's so much. And I was like, okay, guys, I get that Africa from a theoretical perspective sounds really bad, but I pretty much had a really good childhood. I wasn't sitting around saying, oh, look at poor me and look at my HDI index and stuff like that. Like, it felt as though there is theory where we talk about poverty, but then there's practical where I'm looking at how I grew up, and I'm like, we didn't have much, but I had a hell of a childhood. Like, I enjoyed every minute of it. And so having studied development was also part of the reason I said, okay, I want to create something that is creating something positive. Like, let's just create something positive so that in as much as we talk about how to fix the current problems, we do have something also that's like, yeah, but look at this thing that can actually grow despite of the problems. Yeah.
You mentioned having a partner. My understanding is that he's American British. So just quickly, how did you come across him, and did he have an interest in running, or the financial side, or both?
Interest in running. So when I met him, I was actually going through a business accelerator where I was thinking about my process, and I was like, okay, I want to find out what went wrong and how I can be better. And so as part of this program, towards the end, you get to make a pitch. to an audience of people. And so he was actually among the people who are in the audience. And so after the pitch, he was like, I completely resonate with what you're saying. You know, at that particular point, he was managing director of change.org, and he was just leaving his position. I think he was looking for something different. And so that's how we met essentially. After I gave the pitch and the talk, we chatted afterwards. It's like, that was such an interesting proposition. He comes from a background of social campaign. And so he was basically looking at it from a perspective of, I do agree with you, like Kenya needs to have a running shoe. Like it makes absolute sense.
And to give him a shout out, I've got, his name is Weldon Kennedy, is that correct?
Yeah.
I think what most interests me here is that you're not just starting a business as a business from the ground up, from the beginning. You seem to have had very, very clear intentions with regard to what you're trying to do for your community, your country, how you give back, your environmental impact. And those are incredibly important aspects, because so many big companies have to be pushed in those directions, and a smaller company in the current day and age has the ability to start up with good intentions and act on them. So I'd love to just give you the platform to talk about really what your goals have been here, other than to obviously, you know, you need to be able to break even to continue, but beyond that, the kind of goals that you have for Enda.
I think it was just, as I said, the meeting of minds and agreeing an agreement in terms of what we wanted for ourselves, for the world, and for the company. Like having worked in different places and saying, okay, these are the good things I liked about all the places I worked. These are all the negative things I didn't like. And so how do we create a company that basically maximizes on the positives? And so one of the things we did was to commit to the social aspect of basically saying we want to commit that this company shall be formed with the purpose of creating social impacts in Kenya. And secondly, we want to also make sure that it is as environmentally friendly as possible. I mean, there's certain limitations. It's not been easy to kind of get to the point where we want to be, but we are also saying, what kind of world do you want to live in or run in? And so you're like, why can't we create a company that is also valuing the world that we want to live in? And so that has also led us to getting our climate neutral certification, which is essentially saying we measure and we basically account for our carbon footprint. And at the same time, we also got certified as a B Corp. So B Corps are companies that are committed to social impact, and you do actually undergo a rigorous audit. Ours took 7 months. It was one of the longest audits I've ever done, but it's just confirming that this business isn't just about money. It's about people, it's about community, it's about the workers. So what are we doing so that we emulate the example that we want to set out?
Right. And how many other companies, for example, in Kenya would have both of those certifications?
In Kenya, I think we're the only climate neutral company, but there are a couple of B Corps in Kenya. I think there must be about 40 other B Corps, but the combination of the two, we are definitely the only ones.
Great. Well, congratulations on that. Let's just go over a couple of examples of what you do. So for example, is it that you take a certain amount of proceeds and apply them to the community? Is that one kind of way that you can be involved socially?
Yeah, so that's also something else we do. We commit 2% of our revenues to community development projects in Kenya. The reason why we do this is because we said from the start, we want to make social change. So we don't want it to be an afterthought where we get to, okay, how much money have we saved? Can we now spare some for the community? We are basically saying we are in it together, do or die. We swim together, we drown, we try it, but we are together. And so the whole aspect is to create a system internally where you think of community development as something that is a core element to the existence of the company, right? And I think if you look at the history of Africa, look at the history of Kenya, there's been a lot of extractive practices, and so I feel like we've already seen what extraction can do, right? So what if we try the opposite, where we're not just looking at business as a thing where you extract for the maximization of shareholders, but basically saying it's a thing where you grow with a community, so that if it grows, you grow. And one of the things I always find very interesting in Kenya is how you'd have this place where rich people live, and then there's like high walls with fences and like all these things. And I'm like, you're basically protecting yourself from the very community that you live with, But if you're in an in a more egalitarian society, then you don't need to do that because everybody is at a decent position.
I think that's a big difference between sort of philanthropy, which is a very popular term in the United States. When you've made millions and billions of dollars, then you give some of it away, as opposed to having a mission statement where you are, as you say, 2%, you can hopefully factor that into your cash flow, and then it's always there, and it's earmarked. I was also interested in how you were trying to deal with the environmental impact and beyond just being climate neutral, because I ordered the E10 shoes from you, and instead of coming in a box, they came in this lovely bag, which I know people can't see this on radio, but maybe I'll show this one clip. But it's an Enda bag, and you can describe. I can see it's got the colours of the Kenyan flag running along the bottom, and immediately I just thought, well, why? Yeah, I'm always throwing out shoe boxes. Why this is something I can use.
Exactly. So that was the whole idea of switching from shoe boxes to bags, because we realized the first time we sent, like, the boxes were beautiful. And that's one of the things we think about, because even when you lose a box, more people look at it as a presentation thing and a way of still communicating the brand. And so we did have that discussion of what do people value most? Do they want the unboxing experience, or do they really care about like the status of how the world is? And so that's why we, after our first production run, we decided to switch from boxes to shoe bags, because of the very idea that it's much easier to throw out a box mentally than it is to throw away something that's made of cloth. So you think, okay, maybe I can use it to store something. And that was the trigger we were trying to create to do that. And so we created the bag. At the bottom, it actually has a strip of kikoi. Kikoi is a fabric that is indigenous to Kenya, Tanzania, basically East Africa. And so we try to pass that along. In our shoes as well, we use recycled newspaper. And similarly, the local factory we're working with uses renewable energy to basically, like, most of Kenya uses renewable energy, like hydroelectric, where most of it is basically from water. And so the idea is that even in the packaging, in the feeling of the shoes, in the how we communicate, it's all about creating a system where we reuse or reduce or recycle. Like, we just use any of that element.
To recap here, the decision to insert Kenyan newspaper into the shoes as a filler seems like a brainwave. A chance not only to recycle and reduce, but to give customers around the world some information about what's going on in that country. Sadly, my E10s did not come with the newspaper. Apparently yours should. And when Nava casually announced that most of Kenya uses renewable energy, she was actually understating the case. According to a Reuters article last December, over 90% of Kenya's electricity comes from renewable sources. This is mostly a combination of geothermal, for which Kenya is Africa's pioneer, and, as mentioned, hydroelectric. Solar and wind power feature much less prominently, with issues over land ownership being one of the contributing factors. Per capita, the country uses but 1/100th as much electricity as the USA. Hearing all of that, you can maybe understand why, at the start of our interview, Nava explained her frustrations while practicing international development, to hear only about poverty and corruption, and not the positive stories to come out of Africa. And now back to the conversation, and my reaction to Nava's comments about Enda's reuse, recycle, renew policy. It makes a lot of sense, and maybe just from my perspective, I would say it's going to be a long, long battle for you to ever rival Adidas or Nike or any of those companies. But by doing the right thing at the beginning, you have much more chance of attracting people who are looking for something like that. And I would consider myself among those. It's like, oh, Kenyan running shoe company, environmentally friendly, working with the community. This is something I want to support. And there are lots and lots of us out there.
One of the things I always like to compare Enda is literally with the story of the Kenyan runner. Like, the Kenyan runner comes from a very humble place. The Kenyan runner comes from a place where some people actually go for a number of years without ever wearing shoes. And the Kenyan runner still triumphs regardless. And so I think as a company, that's what I see as that. Yes, there are people who have it all and they have all the technology and everything, but at the end of the day, the beauty of sports is that it could be, the winner could be anyone, you know, it could be anyone. And so I definitely see end up being kind of like challenging the huge global brands very, very soon, if not that we're already doing it.
Let's talk about the shoes, because it's not desperately complicated. You have, the company's been going for, I guess, about 3 years or so making shoes. You have two shoes, just two shoes.
Yeah, so why only two shoes? Because that's just where we started off. We started off with one shoe because that's what we could afford. And then the one shoe kind of sold really well. And then now we went to the second shoe.
While Enda is planning to unveil a trail shoe in 2021, the two that it currently has on the market are the E10 and the Lapatet. And Nava describes both in somewhat technical terms. Runners will enjoy this next minute. The rest of you will hopefully learn something too.
The E10 is a lightweight trainer, 4mm heel to toe drop. It's super light. The idea was that you basically feel like you're running without wearing anything on. So that's why it's like super light. It's designed for the midsole to cup the heel. So when you kind of put your foot inside, your heel is somewhere in between the midsole. So the idea is that it really kind of like wraps around your feet and it's super light. When we were creating it, the feedback from the athletes was like, I want to wear shoes without feeling like I'm wearing shoes. So that's our first product. The second one is called the Lapatet. Lapatet is a Kalenjin word that means running. So Kalenjin is the major tribe in Kenya where most of the runners come from. They do come from other tribes, but Kalenjin is the most predominant. And so it's a word that you hear a lot when you're hanging out with runners. They will be like Lapat or Lapatet. And so we decided to give it that name. It's for longer distances, ideal for 20 to 42 kilometers. Like it's the shoe that most people will run with on a marathon. It's also a daily trainer, so most people will also wear it on a day-to-day. It has a 6mm heel to toe drop. It has a pocket, like we basically try to emphasize a midfoot strike. So it has a very bouncy, the area just under the midfoot is very bouncy so that it kind of like accelerates that. And it features a neat upper. The whole idea of all the shoes we make is that it basically moves with your foot as opposed to feeling like it's something you've put on. So it's also a snug foot fitting. Yeah.
Earlier, you raised something that I'd be really remiss not to ask about. And you mentioned that a lot of Kenyan runners spend many years running barefoot, don't even have shoes. And so, there is a whole camp out there, as you are fully aware, of barefoot runners. So why do Kenyan runners need to progress to, intricately designed shoes in the first place if they're running so well barefoot?
Of course, most people would start running barefoot, but as you progress, shoes are not only seen as a way to protect your feet, number one, but also as a way to kind of like join the big, it's like who you're looking up to, you know, like everybody's right now looking at Eliud Kipchoge, and the next person everybody is looking at is Ronex Kipruto. And so it's just a culture thing where you want to also look as nice as the guys ahead of you. And also there's just also the extra comfort and protection that shoes give you. One of the things that I really found interesting about shoes though was their thought is that running has been made to be about shoes, whereas running is a factor of so many other different things that focusing on shoes is just like saying eat carbohydrates for the rest of your life. You know, like you need the vitamins, you need the minerals, and you do stuff like that. So I'd say it's kind of like that conclusion where we are saying shoes should be able to give you cushioning to be able to do the sport you love, but shoes shouldn't be the thing that guide you to say, without these shoes, I won't be able to run or to be to get a personal best.
Before we run out of time, a little bit about the design of the shoes, the actual visual design, because the shoes just look great. That's one thing, but there's visual meaning to them. So what are some of the elements that you introduce into the actual shoes themselves?
Yeah, so one of the things for the E10, which is the lightweight trainer, and was our first shoe, was the name E10. As we've said before, E10 is a little town nestled in Kenya's Rift Valley that basically has produced the highest number of champions in distance running. So the name itself basically carries a lot of story with it. And it comes in 3 colors, the black, green, and red. We're going to diversify the colors in the next launch, but the initial colors were the colors of the flag. And the idea was that when you put them together, you get that symbolism and pride of Kenya. And at the heel of the 10 is a depression. It's kind of like mimic, like it's shaped like a U, but it's a depression that represents the Great Rift Valley. And so it basically shows the escarpments and the flow of the valley. And the reason why we put this there was to pay ode to the great climate that the Rift Valley has provided. And that great climate has allowed athletes to basically have a lot of endurance when it comes to distance running because of the high altitude.
As you heard, I ordered a pair of the E10s. Being a minimalist runner, I preferred those to the Lapatette. They arrived quickly enough, and as you'd expect from Nava's description, they certainly looked beautiful. Unfortunately, they ran very tight around the forefoot and I had to exchange them out. The replacement pair had not arrived by the time I produced this show, but I look forward to reporting on them down the line. Returns are completely free if you don't take them outside, and Enda does ship globally.
The logo for our company is actually the tip of a spear. And then at the bottom of all shoes, including the Iten and the Lapatette, is the word Harambe. Harambe means let's all pull together. It's Kenya's national motto, and I think it's also very symbolic of our brand as a company, where we say, initially everybody was like, this is crazy, you can't do it. But because we had the support of people from all over the world through our crowdfunding platform, we were able to do it. And so the inspiration for the Lapatette comes from the natural features of Kenya. So if you look at the upper, it has the waves. The waves are essentially something we realized when we were looking at the ocean or the sky or the savannah. When you see the wind passing through it, it kind of gives you this wavy effect. The Lapatette also has it features 2 fabric designs that are indigenous to, I'd say, East Africa and Kenya. So on the heel tab, you have a colorful print called the kitenge. Kitenge, again, it's like the colorful African fabric that's used to make dresses that are colorful. On the tongue of the Lapatette is a fabric known as the kikoi. The kikoi is the same one we use for the bags, where like the little strip at the bottom. So putting out of those 2 fabrics is also kind of just acknowledging that there's a little bit of culture going on in there. And on the heel, on the sole of the Lapatette, you have a groove, and that groove literally has the topographical map of Rift Valley. We literally took a part of it and imprinted it on the molds. And so the shoes aren't just running shoes. We're basically using them to share Kenya's running culture and to also kind of have an opportunity to have a way to also include some of our culture into the global running industry.
I do encourage you to visit Enda's online presence. The YouTube channel is particularly great, with lots of short videos, some featuring Nava, some offering a look inside the factories, some detailing the company's community work, and others profiling everyday Enda runners. And if you go to endarunning.com, then as well as being able to see the company's mission statement, its impact, its blog, and of course, buy its shoes, you can also sign up for its weekly newsletter, which comes with stories about African runners, running in general, and even details of the Kenyan runner's diet. The day I sat down to edit this story, Enda unveiled a new video about its face masks. These are being made by, and profits will go to support, the Heshima women, a group of mothers of disabled children in Reuters, just outside Nairobi. Typically, this would be a self-supporting community, but the work of its Dignity Designs outlet has been largely curtailed by the economic downturn as a result of the coronavirus epidemic. I'm happy to say that the masks sold out on the first day. What's up, Pat?
Is that Tony?
Yeah, it is.
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
Hello, Tony.
How are you doing, Chris?
All right. Why are you carrying the microphone?
Because I fancy recording a first day back of the race.
Oh.
It's Wednesday, July 8th, about 5:30 in the evening, and I'm at Williams Lake, a few miles south of Kingston, in the Hudson Valley of New York. I'm doing something that normally I might be doing on a weekly basis from spring through to the end of the calendar year, taking part in a race. Now, this is a running race, a trail running race, but I'm sure that the feelings I'm about to express apply if you're a cyclist, a swimmer, maybe a skier, pretty much any sport where you typically train on your own, but then come together to compete against others. And my feelings go like this. Races are important for two different yet complementary sets of reasons. The first is that you want to know what you're capable of. It's good to have a challenge, and it's fun to go up against other people. The other set is that you just want to see those other people, hang with them, chat with them before and after, and sometimes during your race as well. Because the people you race with are often people you don't see otherwise, and yet they become your friends, your familiar faces under a certain set of circumstances. And not least because most races have some form of refreshment set up at the finish line. It's a social engagement, as much as it is a competitive one. Hey Steve.
Tony, how you doing?
I'm good. We get to race again.
Yeah, this is great.
This is very exciting, isn't it? It's like, what the hell? Not used to it. We're all a bunch of masked rangers, but yeah, it's exciting to be able to do it. And that's why I've missed them so much. It helped that, over the course of the spring, once we got over the initial month of COVID lockdown, virtual races started popping up. We talked about the Ontario Mile 2 episodes back, how we were given a solid 10 days to log our best time for this annual local race on the honour system, and for which we were then emailed a printable certificate. And certainly, that is a something. But still, there's nothing like the real thing. How much was it again?
$10.
I thought it was, so that's my 10.
Okay, you can fill out your
And
form.
fill out.
Fill out your form there.
Have people been running already?
Oh yeah, people started right. Several people running.
But as you can probably tell by that brief conversation at the sign-up tent, the real thing is still not quite with us, at least not where I live. Welcome to the new world of socially distanced racing. So let's talk about the series a little bit. What do we have? What are we at? Race director Kevin Roach.
This is the 47th year of the Kingston Summer Series, and after the races were done last year, someone who'd helped mostly do the timing and such, Rich Gromick, said to me, "Kev, thanks for keeping the tradition going." So when we thought about this year, we have to do something to make it work. We're sitting in my back patio and figured, I just thought popped in my head, why don't we just have a rolling start? Staggered start. Just kept talking about it a little bit more and figured, well, if we let people come right after work at 4 o'clock, start as late as 7, they'll be done by 8, so they're done before dark. Everybody can keep their distance from everybody else. We ask people to put their masks up if they're passing someone or being passed. But otherwise, we've had no issues at all with people being comfortable. Everyone who's done it has been so thrilled and say, well, thanks for letting us actually run. Everybody's doing these virtual races, which is wonderful if that's the only thing that you can do. Some people have made a course and you can go do the course, like my daughter did the Boilermaker course this past Sunday morning. But we figured, at least we could have it same day, same course, everybody did the same thing. So it's closer to a race. We let everyone self-time. We have everybody fill out a little report when they're done.
The Kingston Cross Country Classic is usually there's lots of reasons to love it. One, it's usually 5 different weeks on Wednesday evenings, great time, middle of the week, usually 4 or 5 different locations. I think it usually does Twin Lakes twice.
Twin Lakes twice.
Yeah.
And sometimes here twice.
Usually is it 15 or like...
I forget. Even 15, 20 maybe.
It's so inexpensive. We get 5 races and Keegan supply a keg at the end of each one, or 2 kegs.
We buy Keegan ales, and he's always really generous with us. We usually supply watermelon. We usually have kids races. We decided to not have that this year, you can look around and see everybody's kind of keeping... a lot of people are with people that they normally are hanging out with, so they feel comfortable being closer to others.
We pause so that Kevin can talk to someone driving out of the race area. He noted that they didn't register and asks them to. They say they prefer not to use the pens that have been provided, so they were happy just to run a marked course. They seem nervous about the congregation of people. Others appear far more confident with their own good health as they enjoy a pre- or post-race chat in the company of their running friends. So we lost the kids' races, which always have been a fun thing, just having the kids just do like a half mile or a mile. But again, I guess we're also just very, very grateful to have what we can.
We're really fortunate that this worked out so well. All the pieces fell into place and we're able to do it, so we're really happy.
Are you aware of anything else similar around here that's like even within a couple of counties that's been able to come back in this kind of format?
I haven't heard of anyone else doing this.
And we've got a lovely souvenir that you and I are both sporting right now.
Yes, it's really worked out well. It's like, well, what can we do? Well, can we do a mask? So I searched around and got a really reasonable price, and the same folks who print our shirts for the Shamrock Run really inexpensively screen printed it for us. So it also gets to highlight the fact that all of the entry fee proceeds are going to Project Resilience. So I talked to the county executive about that, and he was thrilled to, and gave us the logo to put on there. So that worked out well.
Project Resilience is, if I'm right, it's where local restaurants that were otherwise shut have been able to be employed to make meals for the food banks.
Right, and now they're actually doing that. I think that switched from making meals, because restaurants are now open, to be more of a grocery delivery service. So because it's still going, we're hoping to be able to give them a $1,000 check by the time we're done.
Oh, that's wonderful too.
Yep.
You mentioned it as being a mask, but actually you later corrected. These are lovely green, Irish green bandanas.
Right.
So there are many different forms of masks, but a bandana is always useful in dusty scenarios.
Right.
And
Yeah, this has worked out well because you can just pull it right up. You can keep it down and pull it up as you need to as you're passing runners. So we're really happy.
And so to the topic of racing. Now, if you're relatively new to running, and especially to trails, you will likely be better off making a weekend road 5K your first race. It's a comfortable distance and typically attracts all types. And even if you're worried you might look slow, nobody else does. And people tend to walk the course anyway, so it's very unlikely you'll be bringing up the rear. It's my hope that these weekend 5Ks, likely with limited entry and other social distancing procedures such as at this cross-country series, will be resurfacing in many areas over the summer. Still, the tips I'm about to offer apply to almost all forms of racing, even as you'll hear me traversing what's a pretty difficult trail course. A caveat, I'm not a running coach, like my previous guests, Steve Schallenkamp and Dick Vincent. But typically, I can expect to finish in the top 15% at most races, which, factoring in my age, I'm 56, really isn't bad. Even at the big road marathons like Boston and ultras like the Escarpment Run, I'm usually in the top 30 to 40% of runners. Perhaps best of all, I've improved by trial and error, i.e. by making mistakes, and I'm happy to share those lessons learned. I'm figuring on getting out maybe just to warm up and just do it. We got 3 weeks here.
Want to warm up together a little bit?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep my mask to my wife.
The warm-up is the most undervalued part of race day. I used to skip it, showing up shortly before the gun went off and wondering why it hurt to run hard and why my legs hurt even more the next day. A 15 to 20 minute warm-up gets your legs moving, your blood flowing, acclimatizes you to the course, and sets you up nicely to pick up the pace once you start the actual race.
I'm just out here because I want to, it's a series. You got to come out.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a good cause and it's good to see people.
The first week of the cross-country series, I warmed up with Steve Schindler, who previously taught me the trick of preparing for a hard 5K race by warming up on the entire 5K course. We ran together for our, quote, race as well, taking it pretty easy until the last mile, when I gave it a push at the end. The kick felt good. Returning for the second week, July 15th, I set out on my own, using my phone for my self-timer because I forgot my wristwatch.
Activity started.
So we're starting here down by the car park, down by Williams Lake. A little bit of an incline on the gravel just up to the rail trail. And from the rail trail, we get a little bit of a level on all these races anyways. Really got to pace yourself. If it's odd starting a so-called race on my own, I don't run unaccompanied for long.
Hey.
Doing it twice.
Oh, good for you.
Are you Tony?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good podcast. Thank you.
Oh, great. Oh, I'm glad, but I'm actually doing a little piece on this about us getting back out and racing.
Okay.
Ah,
Yeah, I did it once tonight, but I figure what the heck, I need to work. Do it twice.
what's your name?
Jeff.
Jeff, all right.
Yeah.
So what was it, 4 miles?
Yeah, I think it was like 4.2, but I actually took a wrong turn and only went 3.66, so,
Okay.
but
So you're sending yourself back out to atone for your...
yeah, but I don't put my time down, so I still work hard at it. It's nice about this race. You don't have to,
You can kind of do what you want to do, really.
yeah, you got the race atmosphere, but you keep the time to yourself.
I was saying to Kevin there when I was doing a little piece with him that, you know, people have just missed the camaraderie of the racing.
Exactly, just showing up, getting motivated to run again really hard. I love it. Everyone's friendly and nice. You know,
Yeah,
it's like, it's a welcoming area.
yeah.
Jeff, who I don't believe I'd ever met before, and I really didn't know I had fans of the podcast out there, really hit on some key elements of racing. That it pushes you to go harder, you have the social aspect, but if you don't want to, you don't have to even put down your time. In short, it's as competitive as you want it to be.
You were pretty fast last week. I saw you on the list. I was like, oh.
You know, it wasn't bad. I think my general measurement these days is there anybody older than me ahead of me?
This is where I must have taken a wrong turn. Yeah, it looks like.
He's gone straight ahead. Yo!
This way, Tom.
For first-time racers, I can absolutely assure you, road runs don't have this kind of problem. Besides which, unless you're in the lead, you can usually follow the person in front of you on the road. But on a trail, following the markers, or not, is all part of the fun, part of what we sign up for.
So I just completed my first mile at 8:40, which is a little worrying in the sense that was my overall pace last week on a shorter course where I ran very hard at the end. So potentially I've come out a little bit fast today.
I'm one of those runners who really does prefer to go out steady so as to finish fast. To me, there's no better feeling in a race than ending it strong, and nothing much worse than feeling like you can't actually make it to the end. Still, sometimes you do go out faster than you meant to, and you just have to adapt accordingly, either pulling back so you have something left at the end to give, or trying to hold on to your pace despite it all. The latter choice can result in a fast time that you didn't know you were capable of. It can also exhaust you.
Now on some proper real trail here, roots, rocks, quite narrow. It's kind of just running along the side of a hill, very narrow. It's the stuff that a lot of us really enjoy. Kind of no two steps are the same. Alright, finally we get to come down a little bit. That was
35 seconds. Distance 2 miles. Average pace 8 minutes 44
Alright. And I'm on the same pace as I was last week. It's a long time since I've done anything like this with the sound of someone at my heels. It's quite a nice sound. It's keeping me moving, that's for sure.
Generally speaking, the best advice I can give about racing is to run your own race. Set your own goal and don't let someone else distract you from it, even if your goal is to beat a specific someone. Run the way you know you can run and hope that it will bring you to the finish line ahead of your competitor regardless. It's a matter of mental chess and it doesn't always work out the way you want it to. It can't do, not for the both of you. But that too is part of the fun. A hard run against and alongside someone almost always ends in congratulations and handshakes. Or perhaps these days, an elbow bump if you're lucky.
I'm in the slipstream. Someone way younger than me. How old are you? 14. Good running. Feeling good? That's what we want to hear.
Another great thing about community races, they attract people of all ages.
Now we're coming down to the cave, I think. Kind of really have to adjust your eyes.
This is, by the way, the only local race I know of that runs through a cave. Or to be more precise, a mine. Adjusting the eyes for the dark and trying not to fall on the slippery and uneven surface is just another, yes, fun factor.
Yeah. And that was a mine, we got to climb out of it. Woo.
Running on pace doesn't always work out. Sometimes you slow down when you don't want to, and sometimes you speed up when you don't plan to.
So my 3 mile average was right down to about 8:33, which means I did that third lap again faster than I wanted to. I do feel I'm paying for it. I do not have a whole lot left to kick at the end. This part here has a habit of killing people at the end of this race.
When I reach a familiar short steep hill, maybe about half a mile from the end of the race, my instincts say to walk it, but I also know that if I do, it'll be hard to run again. I power hike it as fast as I can, knowing it's the last climb of the race.
Now we're finally back on the rail trail. I believe we got to double back somewhere before we can get back to the car park.
Thinking now about how racing is inherently different for the time being in this socially distanced environment, it occurs to me that there are ways it is still very much the same. There's nothing to stop any of us competing against our regular race buddies, setting off together and just making it a one-on-one, or in a small group if you all feel comfortable with each other. And it occurs to me too that the ultra runs I compete in, and the major marathons like New York and Boston, all have a staggered start of multiple waves. So that unless you actually ask someone, you don't know whether the person who's overtaking you, or preferably who you're overtaking, set off ahead of you, same time as you, or behind you. Which brings it back to running your own race. Certainly on those longer distances, whether it's the discipline of the steady mile on a road race, or going by individual landmarks on an ultra trail run, you're actually engaged in a long distance time trial. Other than the fact that someone is logging your finish time, it's really not that different than the setup we have here.
Got about 200 metres to go. 14 is a bit of a downhill. Down the last crest. And finish. All right.
There is one difference with the self-timing though. My phone is too sweaty to unlock and log my time. In fact, most people who get into the finish line look like they're emerging from a sauna. It's pretty humid out there on a midsummer's evening around these parts. It takes me at least a minute to unlock the phone, and ultimately I have to guesstimate my final time. It doesn't matter much. There's no medals, no real bragging rights. Just a good feeling for going hard, gratitude that someone marked out a course, and relief at not getting lost and making the finish line in one piece.
Good, yeah, that was a great course. That was proper cross country.
Good.
I felt more windy than usual. I mean, it did. It felt like every which way.
When I was
cool.
walking it, it felt like this is just so cool.
Yeah, actually, I mean, when my phone dries a bit, I'll try and look at the map on there because it'll be like a kid who got high for the first time who was trying to do a math problem.
Fun course on the activity app. Here's what it looks like.
Yeah, that's what it felt like.
It's
actually like some kind of like fly shape.
It really is something.
Plus, of course, I got to see my friends again, and maybe even made some new ones. It's a permanent cliche, but as ever, it's about the journey. This episode of One Step Beyond was written, produced and narrated by Tony Fletcher. Incidental music in this episode was Revealed in This Nature by Nava Fletcher. The theme song One Step Beyond is by Madness, used with their permission, and the logo is by Mark Lerner. You can reach out to us at onestepbeyond@ijamming.net, IJAMMING.net. You can also find us on all social media, just search One Step Beyond Podcast, and our website is buried over at acast.com. All these links will be supplied in the show notes. And if you are listening online, please know that you can subscribe and download on just about every podcast platform known to man. It's always great if you want to leave a positive review, and it's especially great if you want to reach out. Whatever you're doing in the world, peace.